good, as always, to be in the house of the Lord this morning, to be able to assemble together and to be with God's people and to rejoice in the things that He has done for us, and to look into His Word and to glean out the things that are necessary for us, a lesson that we need to learn from Him, for this is what we need to do. We don't need to, it's good, we need to study the Word and everything, but the message is to accept Jesus, and Jesus is the doing of the Word. Christ is the Word, the living Word of God. And just knowing it, we can know it, and we can explain it away, or we can try to make excuses to it, but we need to look at the whole story. We're in Genesis 29, and the reason I said look at the whole story because this is another one of those verses to me that, as in all the scriptures really, that you need to look at the whole story. There is lessons in each individual chapter, but we do need to look at the whole story of how things came out. And we know the beginning, we've studied of how Jacob and the deceitfulness and the way that he got things, and the things that he did, and the promises that the Lord made to Abraham, the promises that He made to him, that the Lord works through these things a lot of times, as He did with Jacob, because the Lord sees the end of the matter. And as I mentioned before, the difference in Jacob, as we are looking at him now, and the difference, the difference in Jacob and the difference in Israel, after he goes through all this, and when he wrestles with the angel of the Lord, which some agree, some don't, I believe is Christ. It talks about angels, and it talks in several places about the angel of the Lord. And there is a difference. But we see here that his life was changed. The way that he did things was changed. That he become more humble, and that he become more susceptible or aware of the needs of others than he did of himself, which, as we see in this chapter, he thinking mainly of Jacob. Genesis 29, verse 1. Then Jacob went on his journey and came into the land of the people of the east. And he looked, and behold, a well in the field, and lo, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks, and a great stone was upon the well's mouth. And thither were all the flocks gathered, and they rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the sheep, and put the stone again upon the well's mouth in his place. And Jacob said unto them, My brother, whence be ye? And they said, Of Haran are we. And he said unto them, Know ye Laban the son of Nahor? And they said, We know him. And he said unto them, Is he well? And they said, He is well, and behold, Rachel his daughter cometh with the sheep. And he said, Lo, it is yet high day, neither is it time, for the cattle should be gathered together. Water ye the sheep, and go and feed them. And they said, We cannot, until all the flocks be gathered together, until they roll the stone from the well's mouth. Then we water the sheep. And while he yet spake with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. And it came to pass, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. And Jacob kissed Rachel, and lifted up his voice and wept. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother, and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. And it came to pass, when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him, and embraced him, and kissed him, and brought him
to his house, and he told Laban all these things. And Laban said unto him, Surely thou art my bone and my flesh. And he abode with him the space of a month. And Laban said unto Jacob, Because thou art my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Tell me, what shall thy wages be? And Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. And Jacob loved Rachel, and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. And Laban said, It is better that I give her to thee, than that I should give it to another man. Abide with me. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him as a few days, for the love he had for her. And Jacob said unto Laban, Give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in to her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place, and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter, and brought her to him, and he went in unto her. And Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Zilpah, his maid, for a handmaid. And it came to pass that in the morning, behold, it was Leah, and he said unto Laban, What is this thou hast done unto me? Did not I serve thee for Rachel? Wherefore then hast thou beguiled me? And Laban said, It must not be so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 other years. And Jacob did so, and fulfilled her week. And he gave him Rachel, his daughter, to wife also. And Laban gave to Rachel, his daughter, Bilhah, his handmaid, to be her maid. And he went in also to Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. And when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, Surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction, now therefore my husband will love me. And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, Because the Lord hath heard I was hated, he hath therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, Now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. And she conceived again and bare a son, and she said, Now will I praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah, and left bearing. Does anyone have anything you'd like to say on this chapter, or anything we've been looking at? We find here, as we looked at last week, of Jacob and the ladder that he saw, and the vision that he saw, and the promises that God made unto him, that he would be with him whithersoever he went, and he would bring him again into this land. And which we know this land that he was bringing him to was the promised land to Abraham, of the inheritance that was given to Abraham and Isaac, and that was carried on to Jacob here, that he would bring him again to this land to fulfill the prophecies and to fulfill the promises that God had made unto Abraham. And as we've looked at before, the main promise was that the Messiah, that Jesus, the Son of God, would come out of the lineage of Abraham. And this is the way that it went. And This is one of the things to me that some people may be able to explain it a lot better than I do, that God knows the beginning and the end of every one of us. And we sometimes go through a lot of mistakes and a lot of misgivings before that we get to the point that the Lord can really use us. And when we get to the point of where the Lord can use us, then the Lord can rejoice in His dwelling with us. And a lot of these things, although that they may not seem quite right, work out to the good. Jacob got a lot of experience here, but it always would be better if we followed the Lord from the beginning. As the wisest man that ever lived in the flesh, besides of Jesus Christ, which was the Son of God, we know that Solomon, as we read, and as Donnie read some of his writings today, that he said to remember thy Creator in the days of thy youth. This is always the best way. Yet God can use us even in our mistakes, that as we come to the point to where that we can rely on God. If we hold on to our own knowledge and our own way of doing that will cause us grief, then until we come to that point, as I said, the Lord knows whether we are or not. This is not something that He makes us do. He simply knows what we're going to do. And that's kind of one of the things that, as I said, that some people maybe can explain more than I do. Some people, forget what they're called, but call them hard shells. They believe that you don't really have a choice when you're born. God either determines you're going to serve Him or not. This is not the case. God knows, but He does not make we all have a free choice. But we find Jacob here, as God had promised him, and as he in his first work, and Jacob went on his journey. In other words, after that he had talked to God, after he had seen the vision, after he had built an altar, and after he had done all these things, that he continued on his journey to the right place, because he was sent there, because that it was not pleasing that he married the children of these idolaters that did not worship God. But he said he went on his journey and came into the land of the people of the east, and we know that this is the land of Haran. And he looked, and behold, a well in the field. Lo, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks, and a great stone was upon the well's mouth. And thither were all the flocks gathered, and they rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the sheep, and put the stone again upon the well's mouth in his place. And Jacob said unto them, My brother, whence are you? And they said, Of Haran are we. And he said unto them, Know ye Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said, We know him. And he said unto them, Is he well? And they gave him and they said, He is well. Behold, Rachel his daughter come. And he said, Lo, it is yet high day, neither is it time that the cattle should gather together. Water ye the sheep, and go and feed them. And they said, We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together, and they roll the stone from the well's mouth. Then we water the sheep. Now, Jacob, as he came here, we see here that he's like a lot of us. He goes into a strange place that have their way of doing things, and he immediately starts telling them how they should do it. And sometimes we get carried away in how we believe, not in the doctrines of God, but just how I believe, how I think that things should be done. And Jared knows that I'm kind of this way even with my children, because a lot of things that he does is not the way that I done them when I was younger, not the way that I see them. And we have a tendency to think that because people do not do things the way that we do them, that they're wrong. and they're not wrong, they're just the different ways of doing things. The thing that we need to lay hold on and to stand upon is the living Word of God. We're not only to teach the Word, Jesus told us to teach men of Him, that we might understand that the Word of God is about Him and about the characteristics of His life, and not a law written in stone as it once was, but that it is a living Word, as Peter tells us in 1 Peter, that we are lively stones, as living stones, as Christ is a living stone, that we are living stones. And this is why that in the New Testament and in the characteristic of the Old it is taught, because this is always what God has desired, is that we love Him and keep His commandments. As Donnie read in Ecclesiastes, fear God and keep His commandments. Have a reverence towards God, which man today does not have, and we seem to think that this is something new. But as we go through the Scriptures, we see that it is not nothing new. There's always men that reverence God and men that didn't reverence God. It is not something, it is something that we need to present God to them, but don't be so, as I am a lot of times, roused up in my anger and striving that I'm going to save the world. I cannot save the world. Jesus Christ saved the world. And we need to present Him and not what I think or what you think. It don't amount to a hill of beans what you think or what I think, either one. It's the life of Christ in us. And this is, as we see the things here of Jacob as he goes in here and he begins this, and evidently, the Word don't always tell us everything, that these men were waiting, and they were of some of the other chiefs of tribes or families, that they were waiting for the rest of their group to get there. They didn't roll it back and forth all the time. And when Rachel came, I don't know if the herdsman that was with him or with her helped him. We see the description here that this stone wasn't something that one man would roll away. But anyway, he rolled it away and watered her sheep. While he had already said that it wasn't really time to do that. This was in the heat of the day, and they usually watered them in the evenings, evidently. And this was not only a custom, but a law of that land. And we see here that he went into the land of his uncle, of his sister's brother, and was accepted, and how that he stayed with him for a month, and evidently the things that he did in that month pleased Laban. And Laban was the grandfather, I believe, as we look at it. But I ain't going to say on that. I looked at that, but I forget just how that went. But anyway, he stayed with him for a month before they decided that he said, well, even though you are my brother, you're my kin, you're a bone of my bone, he said, it's not right that you labor for me. So he evidently had been laboring for him. He said, it's not right that you labor for me for nothing. What will your wages be? And we find here that Jacob said, well, I'll labor for 7 years for Rachel. And for the first time that I can remember as we've gone through this, the deceitfulness of Jacob met the deceitfulness of Haran. Because Haran didn't say that he would give her him after she said, he said, well, I might as well give her to you as anybody else. And he didn't say nothing about, and again, this was not just a custom, this was a law in that land, that the youngest did not marry before the oldest. This was men and women. And at the end of the 7 years, he tells him that. And He deceives him even in that when he did do it, and he gave him Leah after the feast. And as we looked at the custom of that thing, or as I did, that feast lasted for a week. When the marriage that marriage feast lasted for a week even afterwards. But I believe that he must have, and this again doesn't amount to anything, that in this feast that he evidently got drunk on the wine of the feast and was easily deceived into this. And I'm not trying to give a lesson on sobriety, but everywhere in the Scripture, from Noah to Lot to Jacob, anytime that there's excess of strong drink or wine, it does not turn out right. It turns out wrong, and he got this, but the Lord uses this. We find 4 of the tribes of Israel born here unto Leah, which was the first of them, and we find that as I said, according to the commentary, which may be or may not be right, this feast lasted a week, and I had always thought, as I read over this about 3 or 4 times, it appears that they were right, that he didn't labor for another 7 years before he got there. He fulfilled the week of the feast with Leah. And then he was given Rachel to labor for another 7 years, because it says that he afterwards labored for another 7 years. And then he labors on more even after that as we find these things. But we find here that as all of this was accomplished, that when he had both of the women, he had Leah and he had Rachel, that he hated Leah and loved Rachel. And this probably was the lesson that I needed to learn out of this more than anything. While I knew this before, but it just reconfirmed things here. When we read the word hate in the Scriptures, we think of it as we think of hating someone. And I've heard many people say, well, I don't hate them, I just don't like them. That don't float, brother. Just as in Luke, as I said, this is the lesson I needed out of this. Y'all may not need it, and if you don't, why, it's not anything that I don't believe is going to harm you. But in Luke 14, and let's see where to start here. Verse 26. If any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brother and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And whosoever doth not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Now, as I said, if you take the word hate, as the dictionary definition gives it, of hating someone, despising, rejecting, having nothing to do with them, it don't float in God's Word. The word hate, most of the time, as it did with Leah and Rachel, he simply did not love Leah as much as he loved Rachel. And he showed this, as we do, whether we think we do or not, we show who we like more than others. It's just human nature and everything, but the thing is that if any man, as Christ said, if any man come up to me and hateth not his father and his mother and his wife and his children and his brother and his sister, then he cannot be my disciple. Now we will see that, and we will say, well, I do that. I put God before all these. But most of the time we fail to read the last part of this verse, and his own life also. Well, I can put the Lord before my wife and my children and my mom and my dad, and you know, I know I've got to love the Lord more than that. But it's a hard lesson for us to learn in your own life also. Because we want to do what we want to do. And when we want to do the wrong things, it only tells us one thing. You're not in the will of God. You're not in the love of God. Because, and I'm not saying that you just fell out of faith and everything. I'm saying that we need to keep our life in this sense that we put the Lord first. And as I've said before, and I don't think it's really anything wrong with saying putting the Lord first, because he must be first, but he must be our all. Whether you eat, drink, or whatsoever, do all to the glory of God. Everything we do, when you work, do work, not as unto men, but as unto the Lord. We want to chop our life up into different things, and you cannot chop the service of the Lord up into many things. Now, there's not much that is more common than eating and drinking. Whether you eat, drink, or whatsoever you do all to the glory of God. That brings it down to everything that I do should be for the glory of God. But in my fleshly way of thinking, I want to do what I want to do, and then when it comes time to study God's Word, when it comes time to go to church, when it comes time for prayer, I will set aside time for the Lord. And you cannot set aside time for the Lord. Our life should be for the Lord. And this is what Christ is saying here, it's all or nothing. And this is what God recognized, as we read in this 29th chapter of Genesis, that God seen the way that he was with his wives, and he wasn't pleased with it. And he made it, and as we find, as we will go through all this, that it all works out in the end. And we need to recognize this as we look through these things, that a lot of times we don't understand things, but God has a plan. And if we walk in the plan of God, things will come out. That God has a plan for us, and if we do his will, if we fear him, or fear, love, reverence, however you want to put it, and keep his commandments, it will come out. Jared read to us Wednesday night, which is a scripture that we read a lot, but in Romans 8 and 28, and you all know it. If I can find it, I can't even get Romans. Romans 8 and 28. And we know that all things work together for good of them that love God, and to them who are called according to his purpose. So, well, that's with Christ. Christ stood as a lamb slain. If you read the book of 1 Corinthians, as we get to Moses and everything, Moses was that cloud. Christ was that cloud. Christ was that rock. Christ was with them. We get the stupid idea sometimes that Christ wasn't until he was born of a virgin birth. The scripture tells us that he stood as a lamb slain before the foundation of the earth, before this old world was ever made. The preparation had been made that Jesus Christ, the eternal Son of God, was to suffer for us. And as looking toward for them, and as living in us as it has already happened, that we have these things, and we need to take assurance that if we are the called, if we are the ones that love God, that it will work out. Now, I'm sure Jacob, when he didn't get Rachel, He didn't see how that was good. I'm sure as we get on, when you get the spotted and I get the solid, and he got more, and so they just switched them back and forth, and there was things, you got two deceivers deceiving each other all the time. And I said, you will see this characteristic in Jacob until he becomes Israel. And this is our characteristic until we accept Christ and are born again. We should get rid of that characteristics that we used to have. And we should have the characteristics of Christ. But he did not, even after that he was called Israel, after that he was called by the name that God would build a great nation out of. We will find then that, his most beloved son was sold and he thought was dead. And what happened? Worked out to the good, didn't it? Do you think that Jacob said, oh well, I know this is all going to work out. Now, he grieved, he wanted to die and everything, same as we do, but we need to look and have faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Paul says in Romans that if it's seen, it's not faith. So when things look bad, when things look down, when it don't look like it's ever going to come out right, if you have faith in God, and act upon that faith, faith without works is dead, then it will turn out. And we know that Jacob had this promise, and back last week, Genesis 28 and 15, God promised him that he was going to be with him and he's going to bring him back. That we need to have this faith and continue in this way, because sometimes when I'm off base, I lose sight. God is always merciful and He's always there, leading me, chastising me, and trying to bring me back. The same as He did in Luke 22. As we see, sometimes we look at the faults of these things and don't recognize that God has a plan. Luke 22, and let's just read verse 32. Well, let's read 31. And the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have thee, that he may sift thee as wheat. But I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not, and when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. And this is the thing that we need to remember. When I fall by the wayside, when I do things that I shouldn't do, and the Lord brings me back, when He brings me back for a purpose. God uses our weaknesses to strengthen our brethren sometimes. To tell our brethren, and Don said this morning, he's not always right. Neither are you, neither am I. But when we realize that we're wrong, and we are converted or changed or brought back, then we should use that experience to tell others of their need to rely upon the Lord. Because we know that we have that experience, we have that example in your own life, that we can say, I know that this is a thing we need to guard, because I have failed. I have took my eyes off the Lord and got on the wrong track, and He brought me back. You need to be on guard that you look to the Lord. He will bring us back if we will accept Him, if we will accept the chastising, if we will accept the correction of the Lord. When He accepts us back, we need to use that and every other thing in our life to strengthen the brethren. We are here for one another. Not to tear down one another, not to tell you how big of an idiot or mistake that you made, but to show by our life that we need to trust in the Lord, because He is the only one that can keep us in that straight and narrow way. He is the way, the truth, and the life. You are not strong enough to make me serve the Lord. But if you have the Spirit of the Lord in you, you are strong enough through His Spirit to help guide me, that when you see a brother fall, to help him. To be aware that you don't fall into the same thing of thinking, well, I'll straighten him out. No, you ain't going to straighten nobody out. But if you have the Spirit of the Lord, you can direct somebody back to Him. Anybody else got anything on this? You may not have seen this in this chapter at all, but it is the things that I needed in this chapter. If not, the Lord willing, we'll continue in the 30th chapter.